We welcome to the show for the first time Andrew Bostom, author of The Legacy of Jihad and The Legacy of Islamic Anti-Semitism. And welcome, Andrew. Good to talk to you.
Good to see you again, Steve.
All right. Now, we're talking about, before we get to that video specifically, we're talking about the late Andrew. Is it Pochter or Pochter?
Pochter is my understanding.
Okay, and he was killed. I mean, we heard very little about it. It was mentioned kind of over the weekend as almost a very little sidebar that one of the people killed in the protests over the weekend in Egypt was an American, and that's really all we heard about it. But it was Andrew Pochter, right?
Yes, and supposedly. He was outside the Muslim Brotherhood headquarters in Alexandria, perhaps filming with his cell phone. And according to a veteran journalist, ABC journalist, who had contacts with intelligence in the area, this man tweeted that allegedly Pochter was asked whether he was American right before the knife was plunged into his chest. He had a wound right near his heart, and he died. He died shortly thereafter.
And he was Jewish. Again, before we get to the video, what was he doing in Egypt? What would he be doing? In the midst of the protests outside the Muslim Brotherhood. This
is the interesting, sad tale behind all this. He was originally trained, got his initial training in Arabic. It looks to me to be late high school or maybe very early in college through a State Department program, internships. His in particular was in Morocco, and he was sort of a cub reporter at one point for Al Arabiya. He filed a report during that Arabic training program, where, by the way, just to give you a sense of the mindset already, he was lamenting the fact that King Mohammed had only released around 100 jihadists when Morocco was going through their version of the Arab Spring, and there were at least 100 more that hadn't been released. But he was now in Egypt for additional training through something, through a Middle East organization that's been in existence for 60 years. And this organization, just back in January, February, had given an award to Grand Mufti of Egypt, Sheikh Ali Gomaa, for his alleged ecumenism. He was the Grand Mufti of Al-Azhar University, and during his tenure, I mean, he issued fatwas sanctioning the killing of all Israeli citizens, in other words, including non-combatants. He did not want American Muslims to participate in the U.S. armed forces. He sanctioned wife-beating, the punishment for apostasy, even was against sculpture. And this is a man that the organization that sponsored Andrew Pochter gave an award just this past February for his alleged career of ecumenism. I mean, this is what is really disturbing me now, is that we have the Jewish community, we have the university, we have the State Department.
Well, that's what I was going to say. The State Department. Andrew was a recent alumnus of the State Department's National Security Language for the Youth program, correct?
Exactly. That was that training that I was describing in Morocco when he was also served as a cub reporter for Al Arabiya, lamenting the release of Jihad.
Yeah.
Relenting of the fact that not more jihadists were released.
Right. All right. So that's what he was. So that's what he was doing in Egypt. I mean, he was documenting this.
Well, no. Actually, I'm sorry, Steve. He really was. Look, there's a benign side to this. He was wanting to study more about Egyptian Arab culture, and he was teaching English to children. This is what I find so painful about all this, is that I don't blame this young man. I think he's a product of this rigid indoctrination that people like him are getting.
Yeah,
they're blinded to the hateful ideologies that are so prevalent in the Middle East. They're taught this really despicable apologetic, so that in such an intensive propagandizing way that I think they really lose their bearings.
All right, Andrew, what will we, and we're talking to Andrew Bostom, author of The Legacy of Jihad and the Legacy of Islamic Anti-Semitism. You could check him out at his website, which is Andrew Bostom, BOSTOM.com, is it?
AndrewBostom.org/blog is the main one.
Okay, .org/blog. What we came in with this video of this Israel-Palestine poetry slam. What we didn't play the whole thing, but what were we looking at there? What were we hearing?
Well, in a nutshell, we're looking at an immoral equivalence between, the so-called Palestinian narrative and the basic right of Israel to exist as a Jewish state, which is just typical of the denial of the fact that this is a global Muslim Ummah's jihad against the mere existence of Israel. This is not a small local struggle between two nationalisms. And I just think that, again, it's evidence of the terribly misguided propagandizing that these students get. We can't, as adults, as parents, as relatives, allow this to happen anymore. It's just too much. I mean, if they're going to send people to that region, they need to know the basic history of the legacy of jihad. It's still a living ideology. They need to understand what the Sharia is, what its basic prescriptions are. And to go in blind to all that and just assume that they can apply, a sort of Western model of how to understand things and project that onto these cultures is literally suicidal.
Yeah, and that's unfortunately what we saw with Andrew, and you immediately picked up on it, and wrote about it, and I assume your aim is education, frustration, education, and making sure this doesn't happen again, right?
Exactly, that's it. It's not. My heart goes out to the family of this young man, but we cannot allow all these institutions, which I find culpable, to present such a bowdlerized view of the driving ideology that we're living with, which is the Islamic ideology that is clearly rampant in our era.
Yeah, Andrew, thank you for sharing this with us, and we appreciate